Let's work through the complete case management lifecycle. Now, this case management lifecycle is generic and we can apply it to any type of case. The steps are always going to be exactly the same. So let's start in the top left-hand corner, which is where I receive a call from party number one. Alternatively, I may have received a request on my website or perhaps an email. In any event, I'm going to make telephonic contact with party number one. Now, before we even on the call, I already know exactly what it is that I need. I'm going to keep the call rather brief, so these calls are usually between about 5 and 10 minutes. Now, the first thing that I want to know is, what exactly is the current status of this dispute? So let's say, for instance, we're working with a divorce. Are you guys still living together? Are there any kids involved? And have any summonses already been served? So now we're all on the same page and I know what I'm dealing with. Next, I want to make sure that I get the client's email address because I'm going to need to email them afterwards. And if they called from a cell phone number, at least I've got the cell phone number. If not, I'm going to ask them for their cell phone number. I want to start talking about cost immediately on the first call. I consider the client's time as precious, and I also consider my own time quite precious. So I want to make sure that I'm not wasting the client's time and that the client isn't wasting my own time. After the initial call, I'm going to send an email to party number one. And in this email, I'm going to include the client registration form, the divorce information brochure, and the quote, all of those documents that we dealt with previously. From there, if I receive a completed registration form from party number one, I know that they're serious and that they want to proceed. But if not, that's also okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a follow-up call within 24 to 48 hours after the initial contact. And on this follow-up call, I'm going to ask them, are you ready to proceed? If they're not ready to proceed, I'm going to ask the client, do you want me to give you a call back in, say, a day, a week, a month, a year, whichever is fine for them? And of course, on my system, I'm going to log an entry and I'm going to make sure that I call the client at the exact time that we agreed on. If the client is ready to proceed, and if they've accepted the quote, I'm going to issue an invoice. Now, important to note here is that the invoices to parties number one and two are going to be exactly symmetrical. Once party number one pays the case registration fee, I now have the go-ahead to contact party number two telephonically. And what I'm going to discuss on this call is exactly the same as I discussed on the first call with party number one. So we're keeping the process open and symmetrical right from the beginning. From there, I'm going to send the original email that I received from party number one. I'm going to send that email to party number two, and I'm going to CC party number one in, just to reinforce that we are following an open and symmetrical process. I may do a second call to party number two if they haven't called me back already. And if they haven't called me back already, I'm going to ask them, would you like to proceed? If not, let's discuss it. And if you're not ready to proceed immediately, tell me when it would be a good time for us to move ahead with this. From there, once I get the go-ahead from party number two, I'm going to email them an invoice, which looks exactly the same as the invoice that I sent to party number one, except of course it has party number two's details on it. Okay, so again, even the invoices are symmetrical. Once party number two pays their portion of the registration fee, I now have the go-ahead from both sides, and I'm going to issue a formal meeting invitation as we discussed previously. I'm also going to send any case-specific inputs that I need the parties to complete so that we go into the mediation with all of the documentation that we need. Now, if by the time of the mediation, both of the clients have not completed the payments that were required up to that point, I'm going to ask the clients then and there to please do an EFT. I have a laptop with an internet connection ready, and only once I've received payment do I proceed with the mediation. From here, I'm going to have the parties complete the mediation agreement, And if there are any details or signatures missing on the client registration form, I'm going to ask them to complete that as well before we work through the mediation. Now, the little block that you see there for the mediation looks different because that block refers to a sub-process. So I'm going to make use of one of the models that we discussed in the Mediation Basics module. Once the mediation has been completed, I'm going to go home and I'm going to type out the draft agreement. From there, before I send out any agreement, I want to make sure that I've received my payment in full. If I have received my payment in full, I'm going to email both of the parties the draft settlement agreement, and I'm going to CC in everybody. Again, we're sticking to open and symmetrical communication. If there are minor amendments, that's okay, provided that both of the parties agree. If there are amendments and the parties don't agree, what we need to do is we need to go back into the mediation, because we are not going to mediate over email or over the phone. Once both parties are happy with the final agreement, I'm going to debrief them. Now, this is usually telephonically and then confirmed with an email, but depending on the case, you may need to meet with them in person. Now, I'm going to archive the case, but very, very important is I'm going to include these clients on my mailing list, because at the end of the day, I do want to make sure that they remember the great service that they got from me, and I want to keep them on our mailing list so that they could be active client advocates and perhaps in future send me some business.